Hello everyone, welcome to my prediction for UFC Noche slash UFC San Antonio, depending on what name you want to use for it. Personally, I don't like the Noche name just because Noche, number one, the first of the three Noche cards, was like really good, and it's kind of like a great experiment for, not experiment, example, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for. A great microcosm example of the UFC, because the first one, falling backwards into great Grasso versus Shevchenko 2, and great fight for one thing, and a card that everyone was talking about, buzzing about, boom, boom, boom. It achieved, it was so cool. And then for the second one, they went horrendously corporate and tried to use it as this like award bait. Hey, corporate sponsors, we can do cool stuff. We're going to talk about a very, 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 very thin version of Mexican history, and we're going to have civilization level. If you're not familiar with Sid Meier's Civilization, I guess that'll go over your head. But there's a video game called Sid Meier's Civilization. It's a series of games, and it looks like the cutscenes from the early games. So that was interesting, but like, also like very sterile, very devoid of the spontaneity that I think makes MMA very, very cool. And now we're here on the third one, which is the slap the branding on it. Don't really put together a good card or a good concept, and people will still love it. Which, by the way, this should have been a really good card, because frankly, I think Jean Silva's spot should be going to Yair Rodriguez, because then you'd actually have a Mexican fighter on the card. I understand that Diego Lopez trains in Mexico, and the Mexican fan base very, 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 very much accepts him. But could you imagine how much better, given the heat between Yair Rodriguez and Diego Lopez, that main event would be for UFC Noche? Just mind blown. Like that would have been such a better idea. As it is, I mean, we do have a fairly solid main event. The co-main event sucks. The main card largely sucks because Gastelum Stolfus is a depressing fight. Hernandez Fajea could be a depressing fight. And then Luna versus Lee, I don't even know why that's there, because it doesn't make any sense. There are legitimately better fights on the prelims, like Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos. What are we doing there? And even like Joaquin Silva or Claudio Puelles should be on the main card over that. Jesus Aguilar versus Luis Garule. I never get his name right, but that should probably be there. So that it's not built well in that way. So let's get to the usual spiel here. I'm going to be talking about betting on fights. I'm going to be talking about betting odds. I'm going to give you breakdowns that maybe lead to you placing a bet. Feel free. But MMA betting is a way to lose money more so than anything else. It is a very chaotic sport. You are not going to be able to drop down big chunks of money and turn it into a path to financial freedom. Please do not try. And if you do try, do not come back to cry to me about your losses, because somebody did that at one point. They're like, "Oh my God, you led me astray, and I put 25 grand on a fight and the fighter lost." Like, yeah, I told you not to do that. There you go. So that's the spiel. Now let's get into it. Main event time. Jean Silva versus Diego Lopez. And in terms of betting odds here, Lopez is the underdog at plus 184 to plus 200, minus 225 to minus 265 on Silva. I largely agree with that. I've got Silva as the favorite here, and I've got him as the pick. I'm picking him by TKO. Now, is there a way for Lopez to win this fight? Absolutely. It's on the table. Diego Lopez has the frame and the reach to really take advantage of the fact that Jean Silva is not a particularly sharp distance closer. His strength in that regard is that he is willing, very willing, to just tank damage to get into range. We saw that in the Bryce Mitchell fight, for example. And the Melsik Bogdasarian fight would be another example of that. And that when he gets there, he unloads with power and destruction, and once he's in range, he's very good at staying there. Like, it's deceptive. I said he had uninspiring footwork, subpar footwork at range. But once he's in range, once he has, you pin down, not even pin down, but once he has the battle zone defined, he's very good at these small adjustments with his feet that keep him there. And as a result, once he's there, it's very, very hard to shake him. And the issue is, the reason why I don't actually see that as a reason for picking Lopez is Lopez doesn't really do that. Like, he's tall enough, 5'11", he's long enough, 72.5-inch reach to do that, but he likes a firefight. There's nothing about any of his UFC fights that realistically were about minimizing danger, minimizing pocket exchanges, minimizing the medium range violence that Silva actually, does well in. He got hit 63 times by Brian Ortega, who does not have footwork and is pretty much a broken shell. He got hit 42 times by Dan Ige, fresh off the couch, had not in any way been ready for a fight, and has significant range issues of his own, was able to get in there and, come very, very close to the quantity of shots landed by Lopez. You can even see this in the Movsar Evloev fight, of course. Evloev was very able to find medium range. Joe Anderson Brito on the Contender Series, same thing. This is just not a type of fight that he has any history of avoiding in any real shape or form. Like, he's kind of had this matchup, because I would say Jean Silva is a better version of this, but like, that's kind of my point, is you lost to Joe Anderson Brito. Now you're facing a better version of Joe Anderson Brito. Like, that's a problem. You had a competitive fight with Dan Ige. Now you're fighting with a better version of Dan Ige. This is not a positive inspiration. Whereas if you look at Jean Silva's record and run, it's not necessarily super impressive. Bryce Mitchell is a bad striker. For the most part, he has some tricks in his sleeves, but he's not a very good striker. When you defy him his grappling ability, which Jean Silva did, by the fact that he out-grappled him, then he's in trouble. Melisik Bagdasaryan has all kinds of problems. Drew Dober is old and getting older. Charles Jourdain has some serious size issues at 145, which is why he's at 135 now. Weston Wilson is terrible. Kevin Villegas is very young, and they went to decision in a very competitive fight. So I guess that would be the thing, is that Kevin Villegas is similar to Diego Lopez, was able to give him trouble, but at the same time did lose. And despite that Villegas is much less achieved than Lopez, I kind of think he's actually maybe the better fighter, at least in the ways that matter for this matchup. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Jean Silva. There is limitations to his game. There is a pathway to victory for Lopez, but at the same time, he is probably going to get his winning conditions from Lopez, and he is better at exploiting those than Lopez is. He hits harder, in my opinion. He hits cleaner, in my opinion. And when it comes down to it, despite the fact that, again, his footwork is, I think, a long-term issue, in this fight, I think he actually has the sharper footwork in the ways that matter. So, and from a wrestling standpoint, I just think that he's strong enough and technical enough grappling-wise that I don't think the ground game is a path to victory for Lopez. So yeah, I'm fairly confident going with Jean Silva, but we'll see. It should be a fun fight. They're both guys who are going to engage in the range that the other one likes to fight at, and it should be violent. Rob Font versus David Martinez is the co-main event. So this is the fight that has the weirdest odds on the card for me, because Font is a -124 to -138 favorite to +102 to +110 on Martinez. Now, the weird thing about that is I think Font should be a massive favorite in this fight. I understand that he's 38 years old. I get that, but he is coming off wins over Jan Matsumoto. He is coming off of a win over Kyler Phillips. He is not tremendously far removed from that Adrian Yanez fight back in 2023. And in the meantime, his losses are to Davidson Figueiredo, to Corey Sandhagen, to Marlon Vera, to Jose Aldo. These are all champions or challengers for the belt, and that is basically his entire career. The worst fighter who has beaten him is Pedro Munoz. Let that sink in. Now, again, 38 years old, there are nervousness, there are problems, there are concerns, but his chin seems to be holding up. His physicality seems to be holding up. And yes, his defensive wrestling is quite bad, but he is mostly able to get back up, and that's also not something that Martinez really does. So I'm not really sure why these odds are that close. And looking down at this card, I mean, the following people are bigger favorites. Jean Silva, Jared Gordon, Kelvin Gastelum is a bigger favorite. Duško Todorovic is a bigger favorite on this card. Tatiana Suarez, which I do agree with that one, but still. Luis Gurule is a bigger favorite on this card. Cedricus Zach Reese is a bigger favorite on this card. Alessandro Costa is a bigger favorite on this card. I think Alice Pereira is a bigger favorite on this card. And it's very, very weird to me because Martinez is not ready for this. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of faith in Martinez to be a good fighter. He's dynamic. He's aggressive. He's fast. He's explosive. He's got power. He's got reasonably good durability. He has some concept of defense, which honestly goes a long way. But, like, what does he do offensively that John Matsumoto does not do? What does he do offensively outside of being more consistent about it? Because Kyler Phillips is hilariously not consistent. What does he do that Kyler Phillips doesn't do? What does he do that Yanez doesn't do? This feels like a fight that, like, Font is taller in. He is longer in. Taller by 1 inch, longer by 4. And he has a good jab. Like a very, very solid jab. Very solid 1-2 game. Very solid spam. Works the pace. Sneaky power in the pocket with his uppercuts and his hooks, which he likes to slip in. He's got a kicking game that he can utilize as well. And Martinez has just not really beaten anybody. Like, will I be mind-bogglingly surprised if Martinez wins? No, he's a 12-1 fighter who seems to be, like, reasonably solid. But, like, if you look back at his Contender Series fight against Xavier Franklin, who is, you know, got some physical aspects of David Martinez or of Rob Font, in the sense that he's got a jab, but, like, not even as good of a jab, and not even as good of a 1-2, and not even as big. There were moments in that fight where Martinez didn't honestly know what to do. I don't think I'd go as far as to say losing, but didn't really know how to handle someone who just had basic range control. And Rob Font is that guy. So yeah, I don't understand this. I'm gonna be probably betting fairly heavily on Rob Font because you're not. Sorry, David Martinez. Nothing you've done suggests that you are ready for this level of fight. And of course, it wasn't the booked fight. Needless to say, this wasn't supposed to be the co-main event. Martinez was originally supposed to fight Carlos Vera, and that fight fell apart. And then it was Quan Lee, and of course that got rebooked here. And Raul Rosas Jr. was supposed to fight Rob Font, which would have been a far more interesting fight. But as fun as this booking is, I don't. Too much too soon for Martinez. Jared Gordon versus Rafa Garcia. Part of me loves this booking. Part of me doesn't like this booking. The part of me that likes this booking is that it's going to be an action fun fight. Like, it's going to be crowd pleasing. The fans are going to be into it. I'm going to be into it. The people watching at home are going to be into it. And it's going to be a fun time. But, like, regardless of who wins, I don't really think I'm going to come out of this fight having learned anything. These are both guys who should probably be litmus tests for younger fighters. Similar to wrong weight class, but like a David Martinez. But yeah, I mean, it's fun enough. It's fun enough. So let's not get too caught up in that. Both of these guys can be very limited when they have a wrestling game imposed upon them, but I don't really suspect either of them to do it, because while they have a takedown game, certainly, and I expect particularly Rafa Garcia will try to impose his, they are just like a step down, either technically or physically or both, to the people who have really weaponized that against the other one over the course of their career. So I don't think that that's really something that's going to define the fights. I think we're predominantly going to be looking at a striking boxing fight. And Gordon is, I think, the little bit more fluid, the little quicker, and the little bit better at transferring his power on the feet. So I am picking Gordon by decision to just land a higher quality and a higher quantity of fights, of strikes. So, the Q and Q advantage. And I'm looking forward to it, but there's just better uses for them. Oh, and odds, Gordon is the minus 240 to minus 250 favorite. Garcia is plus 190 to plus 205. So it seems like a lot of people have that same sort of read based on that split. Kelvin Gastelum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. This is not a fight I enjoy because if this fight ends up being competitive and like a good fight, it's just a bad sign. There is not really a world where Gastelum developed properly, where he should be, even at this age, 33 years old, be like fighting a guy like fighting a guy like Dustin Stoltzfus. Never mind having me be actually picking Stoltzfus. Spoiler. Gastelum is still pretty fast, but he is too small to be a 185er. Can't seem to get his weight under control, and he's just broken. Like his fighting decisions are like all questionable. His approach is very, very questionable. I don't think he's as tireless as he used to be, which allowed him to get away with a lot of like quite inefficient technique. And that's a big problem. Stoltzfus is the opposite side of the coin, where he shouldn't be good. He's slow. He's not remarkably skilled. He's not remarkably hard-hitting. He's not remarkably technical. But he is incredibly strong, durable, and tenacious, and has good cardio. So I'm just sadness hedging on this one a bit, because if Stoltzfus wins, it's depressing. And I want at the very least for me to be able to go, well, at least I won money and I won the pick. So it's more of an emotional pick than it is one of a really technical breakdown, because like my technical brain, my analyst there is telling me like Gastelum's faster than him. He's a better boxer than him. Historically speaking, a wrestling heavy approach has not really worked all that well against Gastelum. There are exceptions. Sean Brady coming to mind specifically as one that did in fact do that. Robert Whittaker, actually, I didn't watch the fight prepping up for it, but apparently 4 takedowns, but not a lot of top control time. More of a striking affair. I don't have like strong memories of that game, but this kind of reminds me more of like an Ian Heinisch, which was a Gastelum win. This kind of reminds me more of a Tim Kennedy, even like going back way back in the day. So there is that, but yeah, if Stoltzfus wins, I want to have something to celebrate. So I am going with him by decision here. Alexander Hernandez versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. This is an odds fight of Hernandez being, surprisingly enough, the underdog some places, plus 100 to minus 120, and Ferreira being nominally the favorite, minus 105 to minus 120. I am going with Ferreira here. Now, the worry, of course, is that he is 40 years old. He's the oldest fighter on this card, and 40 at any weight class, barring heavyweight, is a concerning age. And this is 155, so it is a very concerning age. But Alexander Hernandez is a very predictable fighter. He has all the physical tools you could ask for. He's got speed, he's got power, he's got explosiveness. He's not untechnical. Like, to be clear, like what he does, it's not badly formed or a mess or anything. The problem just is that he is going to apply that style over and over and over again, and there is not really any change. So if anything stops working at any point, he doesn't know how to do anything but do the same thing, and maybe it'll work. And that's kind of it. Like he never developed any kind of secondary approach or ability to adapt to a fight. And Ferreira is still dangerous, it seems. He has 2 knockouts pretty recently. He's a dangerous grappler. He is someone you do not want to wrestle with if Hernandez tries to use that as an application. So I'm going with Ferreira by TKO, but I will not be surprised if Hernandez comes out and just says, "Hey, old man, how many times do I have to tell you?" And his repetitive display will break things down and get the job done. Santiago Luna versus Quan Lee. This is a late notice replacement fight. This was supposed to be Lee versus Martinez. Interesting note, Luna is making his debut at 135 on short notice. And this is after Loseo Kita missed weight on his debut, trying to make 145 after being a 155er. Luna is not too big for bantamweight, and he was at bantamweight back in 2024, 2023. So, but recently at Lights Out Championship fighting and at Tough Enough, he has been fighting at 145. So I'm a little bit worried about the scales, I guess is what I'm saying about that. But I'm going to go with Quan Lee here. Luna is the guy I predict to still be in the UFC come like 5 years from now. Part of that is because Lee would be 38 years old. But even if there was an age parity, I would still think that, because I think Luna has a lot of room for growth. Lee is formed as what he is, which is a reasonably powerful, reasonably athletic, but very, very uncomfortable striker who resorts to wrestling and blanketing the opponent as a compensation for that discomfort. And Luna has the comfort to fight. It's just that Luna's base is very, very solid, but there's nothing built on top of it. He is a pure foundation and the house is not built yet. He is reasonably fast, reasonably powerful, and he has the aggression and the calmness when things are going wrong on a little level and not be rattled by that. And this is a great sign. It's just that there's not really any technical problem solving going on there at all. And he's been beating up just pure cans. Maybe not pure cans, but like, you know what I mean? Very, very regional level talent. And again, if he picks up the right coaching, the right ideas, the right development, he'll be very, very good. But it feels like at 21 years old, not surprisingly, he's not really ready for this level of fight. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping he will win because, like I said, Quan Lee is not someone I have any particular interest in seeing in the UFC. Not even long term, but even like short term. His fights with Chris Gutierrez, with Zhao Long, and with Gaston Bolaños are all not good fights, except for when he got knocked out by Zhao Long. So, not super happy about it, but like he probably will be able to land very clean shots against Luna and probably also be able to take him down. And I'm surprised that he's the underdog at plus 100, plus 116. I guess I'm not that surprised. Luna is minus 125 to minus 143. Luna is undefeated. He's coming in, and Lee has not looked good. But I think a lot of those bettors are ignoring just the level of competition. Like, yes, Lee has looked bad, but it's against fighters who are well beyond the capabilities of Luna, at least right now. Jose Medina versus Duško Todorovic. I said when they started booking him, I'm never picking Medina in a fight, and I'm not stopping now. He is not good. He is a walking punching bag. I admire the toughness. I admire the tenacity. I admire the heart. But there is no skill backing it up, and there's not really any physicality. He's not powerful. He's not fast. He's not explosive. The only physical attribute that I attribute him with, well, two, I guess. He does seem to have cardio, and he is, like I said, very, very durable. He is very, very tough. But his way of winning is like kick my butt and self-destruct, which, I mean, I can relate to. I have used that strategy myself, but at the end of the day, I got to go Todorovic. Todorovic is not a good fighter, but he is a reasonably good athlete. He does have a boxing game. He has some functioning wrestling and grappling. And I don't expect him to just completely fall apart because I can't recall a time in Todorovic's career where he is self-destructed. He has obviously lost, knocked out by Puna Soriano, knocked out by Chidi Njokuani, knocked out by Christian Leroy Duncan, knocked out by Mansour Abdul Malik. These are obviously all on the table, but it wasn't him self-destructing. It was them having physical or technical advantages over him. And he survived 3 rounds with like Gregory Rodriguez. He survived 3 rounds with Zach Reese, who mauled Daniel Medina, and we're going to talk about him later. But yeah, I've got to go with Todorovic here to either get the decision or get the TKO because it is a bit insane. Todorovic is not really bettable at a minus 333 to minus 400 betting line, though. And plus 250 to plus 310 to Medina is not a steep enough underdog for me to be pondering that either. So Todorovic is the pick, and the bet is stay away from this fight. Claudio Puelles versus Joaquin Silva. I have never had good feelings about Claudio Puelles. I have a maybe it's a chronic underrating of him, but I can't. I also at the same time don't think I've been wrong. Like I think the only time I was maybe wrong was I might have picked Clay Guida to beat him, and I regret that because he got knee barred. But if you look at his wins, it's against guys who either have to grapple with him, Jordan Leavitt, or are incomplete fighters, Marcos Mariano, or are very, very unathletic or washed in the forms of Clay Guida and Chris Grussmacher and Felipe Silva. And then when he gets up to people who are like really UFC caliber, Dan Hooker and Fares Siam, he loses. And he loses kind of bad. Like I didn't go back and rewatch the Siam fight. Maybe I should, but it was a split decision, and I'm not sure why. Puelles literally landed single-digit strikes in all 3 rounds. I'm not really sure what round he was supposed to have won. Maybe I'm going to guess the first and the third because he had like 3 takedowns in both, but like his top control didn't produce damage. So anyways, enough of that. I'm going with Joaquin Silva. Am I super high on Joaquin Silva? No, not at all. But as flawed as his game is, he hits really, really hard. And Puelles has a tendency to fight in a manner that suggests that people cannot hurt him. He is a guy who will roll for leg locks, will pull guard, will be really, really lackadaisical on the feet because his career on the regional scene was him being a 5'10", 72-inch reach lightweight that people just couldn't find their way in there, and being a good athlete on top of that. There's a good fighter in Puelles. It's just I think well, and maybe it's happening because he's lost 2 in a row. Maybe we actually are going to see him have a wake-up call as far as anything is concerned. But I just think that he needs to get to a new gym when it comes down to it. There is not a lot of technical development going on in a fight. Although, to be honest, I don't even think it's gym because he trains with Enrique Barzola. And Enrique Barzola is like the opposite of him. So I don't know. Maybe it's something just kind of baked into his personality. So against anyone dangerous, I'm going to predict them to catch him. So I'm picking Joaquin Silva to win by TKO. He is the underdog or the favorite, depending on your betting line. Plus 100 to minus 112. Puelles is minus 110 to minus 120. Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos is, I think, the biggest favorite on the card here is Suarez. Yeah. And I will be picking her. Suarez lost to Weili Zhang, and there's always the question of what does that kind of pantsing do to you? But at the same time, it's not like she hasn't had setbacks in life with her health and with her fighting career and with her wrestling career. So I am going to assume that what we get is still something more or less resembling the old Tatiana Suarez that got to a title shot. And that is someone who is physically a beast, admittedly a brute technician and a bully, but like probably the most physically imposing strawweight on the roster. She can wrestle well. She is aggressive on the feet, even if, like I said, the stand-up is very brutish. Her grappling is also very brutish, but it's also very, very effective. And with the exception of Weili Zhang and Carla Esparza, who she had a very competitive fight with back in the day, you're not talking about someone who seemingly has met their match at any point. Whereas Amanda Lemos is very much reliant on being the person who's stronger and more powerful, and that kind of highlights all of her fights. When that's not the case, Weili Zhang, Jessica Andrade, and her like just fighting girls that were way too big, like Leslie Smith, they've all beaten her. And even at like relative physical parity with like Verna Jandiroba, she's lost. Like her only fight that I would say has anything approaching physical parity is like, and that she won is, I guess, like Mackenzie Dern, but like Dern also like has bad wrestling and is only a grappler and has to take you down. And Lemos is fairly hard to get there. And yeah, I don't. I'm not saying that there's no way for Lemos to win. She's a hard hitter. Suarez is very hittable, could sting her, could have a big moment, but Suarez is everything that has historically beaten Lemos in one package. So Suarez is the pick. I'm going to say by submission because she likes to take an opportunistic neck every once in a while. And Suarez is the favorite, minus 430 to minus 500, plus 320 to plus 375 on Lemos. Might throw a little bit on Lemos just at those odds. That's a little steep. Aguilar versus Luis Guerrilla. Jesus Aguilar versus Luis Garule. Why do I have a hard time with that name? I don't know. Aguilar is a fighter I never feel really good about picking, and this is no exception because I'm not picking him here. He is dangerous because he has relatively powerful hands and he has a good, opportunistic, aggressive front headlock guillotine game, but he is not structured in any way, shape, or form. His boxing is a mess. His wrestling is a mess. His grappling is a mess. He is an indictment on all of his coaches. Or he just can't be taught. I don't know which is the case. His wins in the UFC are against guys who are like unathletic and not threatening in any way. And in Shannon Ross's case, very, very chitty. So he beat Shannon Ross, Stuart Nicole, and Mateusz Mendonca. Mendonca is the only one that like is a UFC level athlete, but Mendonca has all kinds of problems with like being a bully and not responding to pushback well and being just too low paced. And that's why he went 0-3 in the UFC. So anyone who's won in the UFC has proceeded to beat Jesus Aguilar. Now, Garule has not done that, but Garule seems like a reasonably well-structured fighter. Like, he has a striking game, he has aggression, he seems athletic enough, fights at a high enough pace. He has defensive wrestling issues, I would think, that could be exploited by somebody because his Contender Series fight, he got taken down like 10 times or some silly like that, and it was not against a very good wrestler. So there is that problem, but at the same time, Aguilar's wrestling is not particularly good, and it's not even something he really does. Like, his way of getting things to the ground is to either get taken down or to just attack your neck in a way that allows the fight to end up on the ground. So I am going to go with Garule by decision. I am going to be nervous the entire time because Aguilar will never not be dangerous, but he's just too much of a mess to pick against anything but the lowest level flyweights on the roster. Garule is the favorite at minus 200 to minus 230, plus 163 to plus 190 on Aguilar. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about with Font earlier. Garule against Aguilar, a guy with wins in the UFC, and that Garule does not have, is a bigger favorite than Rob Font. It doesn't make any sense. Now we go to a fight that has no sense being where it is on the card, which is Zach Reese versus Cedricus Dumas, and probably does not have any real reason to exist. The reason I say it's out of place is that Reese has beaten, literally, in his last 2 fights, Medina and Todorovic, who are fighting on this card ahead of this fight, which makes no sense to me. Pardon me. There's that loss to Azat Bukoyev in between there. So his last 2 wins have been against Medina and Todorovic, not his last 2 fights. I'm gonna go with Reese here. This is a pure emotions pick, and I'm not gonna pretend I have any actual like analytical reasons or good like fight breakdown reasons for doing this. I don't necessarily think that I don't, but at the same time, I recognize that I really, really dislike Cedricus Dumas as a human being. And as a result, I am not going to pretend that that is not something that probably weighs in on this pick. So Zach Reese is my pick to win a sloppy decision. He is the favorite at minus 240 to minus 250. That makes me happy. And plus 190 to plus 200 on Dumas. There you go. Alessandro Costa against late notice replacement Alden Correa. Costa is a massive favorite on the card, second biggest favorite on the card, minus 420 to minus 450, plus 310 to plus 333 on Correa. I am taking Costa. Do I have problems with how Costa structures his game? Yes, he's too low output for 125, and that will bite him at some point. But he is strong, decently technical, reasonably fast, and he is UFC caliber, I guess, in a nutshell here. Correa is not UFC caliber. He's beaten guys who I would describe as cans. They are incredibly limited as fighters. He's an opportunistic grappler and he's aggressive, and that's a nice thing I have to say, but he's also lost to guys who are not UFC caliber. So Costa by TKO is the pick. Probably should be a slaughter, but who knows? Maybe Correia will bring the violence. And then we have 2 fights left here. Alice Pereira versus Montserrat Rendon. I don't have a lot to say about Pereira. She's 19 years old and she's 5'10". She's huge, but like her competition is incredibly bad, like 15-15 and 1 bad, and 12 of those wins are Samara Santos. I'm familiar with Samara Santos. Samara Santos is not good. Samara Santos is not a UFC caliber fighter. Samara Santos should be absolutely spanked by anybody who is going to make noise in the UFC within 2 minutes, frankly, and they went to the decision. So I'm not high on Pereira. There's potential. She's big, she's huge, and she's very, very young. So there's potential, but that is about it. And even if I was big on her, I don't think I'd be putting her up against Rendon in her debut. Rendon she has a way of sucking the life out of a fight, which is not great, but like she is actually a reasonably hard opponent to face off with because she's got a lot of physicality and aggression and slow, persistent glacial pressure and clinch work, and she's incredibly strong. So I'm gonna go with Rendon by decision, just because I'm not sold on Pereira in any way, shape, or form. I hope she wins because I'm not exactly excited for a 36-year-old Montserrat Rendon to have a long run in the UFC of actually winning fights, but she is the first person who may actually have any kind of physicality at all that has fought Pereira. So I don't want to say it's a bad signing because, like, this is the problem with bantamweight. As long as it's going to be a thing, these are the people you're going to be signing and trying to give chances in the UFC to. But I wouldn't have gone with Rendon, is what it comes down to. So there you go. And then we have the odds. Pereira is the favorite, -135 to -163. Rendon +110 to +130. I'll be betting on the underdog fairly big there. Rodrigo Cezinado versus Daniil Donchenko. The finals for the UFC tough finale, or a tough tournament. Ultimate Fighter welterweights. Cezinado is a Nova União guy, which always fills me with a little bit of hope when they show up, because they tend to have a at least functional game. I do think that, oddly, unlike most Nova União guys, he does not have any reliable technique that I like. He's physical, he's a bully, he's tough, he's persistent, he's very strong in the clinch, like just raw power, but the technique is like not really there. About the only nice thing I could say about him is that his striking does tend to have at least a surprise moment or 2 or 3 or 4 per fight, where like he just kind of goes, well, what if I do something like kind of cool and kind of unexpected, and it tends to hurt the opponent. So there is that, but that's kind of it. So in that regard, I'm not super high on him. Donchenko, however, seems a little too raw. There is, I think, the right physical tools to be a good welterweight there. He hits reasonably hard. He blitzes well. He has good eyes for counters and is relatively, I don't even want to say relatively, he is actually really calm under fire, which is a great thing to have in your back pocket. But he's also very, very hittable in the way that almost every UFC debutant is. There's not a lot of head movement. It's not hard to find the target. And the other thing that kind of disturbs me here is that he ends up in the clinch a lot without wanting to. There's not a lot of range control in his game. And Cezinado, he loves the clinch. So I'm going to go with the guy from Nova União here to win a decision, but also to probably be like the less interesting guy long term. Donchenko is 24, so like there's a lot of time for him to possibly improve and become good, but there's just a lot of rawness and a lot of openings to be exploited right now that kind of like Santiago Luna, who I was talking about earlier. I absolutely see a future. I see, with relatively minor developments, he could probably become quite good. It's just right now I have no positive thought that actually is in play. So Cesnado by decision. He's a sizable underdog at plus 168 to plus 185. Donchenko minus 210 to minus 225. I kind of get it. Donchenko is, like I said, more exciting and probably the guy that the UFC and I would prefer seeing win. But there's just too many gaps there. Too many gaps for me to go with it. But we'll see. We'll see. I could be surprised. It's not like Cesnado is a super well-formed fighter either. Like he has his own defensive limitations, and Donchenko does hit hard and does have aggression. So the opportunity to win the fight is on the table. I just can't pick it. Anyways, those are the fights for UFC San Antonio, aka UFC Noche. I hope you enjoy the fight card, even though I'm not especially high on it. There's not a lot of fights I'm tremendously looking forward to on the card. The main event is cool. Don't get me wrong. There are some things. Rafa Garcia versus Jared Gordon. That's a fun fight. I'm here for that. I'm also low-key here for the Gurule versus Aguilar fight. I think that is actually going to be fairly fun. But I can't say I'm really here for the rest of it. Now, I understand that this card is a little bit, obviously, injury plagued. Raul Rosas Jr. I talked about not fighting Rob Font would be one of those examples, but we also lost Edgar Chairez versus Alessandro Costa. We lost Raquel Pennington versus Norman Dumas. So, like, there are things here, but at the end of the day, we can only judge what is in front of us, and what is in front of us is not amazing. So that's all I have to say, and we'll be moving on. Check out the links down below for video game stuff, social media, and the MMA Discord simulator over on Discord. So there you go. I think if you put up with listening to me for 40 plus minutes talk about this card, you'd definitely be down for that. So there you go. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you guys after the fights. Probably Monday after the fights, or late Sunday.